So to start with the Bible, Luke 10, 38 through 42. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened up her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Okay? So in the context, in Jewish culture, hosting guests was a sacred duty. Martha was fulfilling a good responsibility. It was something good she was doing. Contrast that with Mary's choice, sitting at Jesus' feet, the posture of a disciple, normally reserved for men, showed focus on the higher priority. It was what was more important. And Jesus' response was he gently corrected Martha and affirmed Mary's decision on the one that truly mattered. And so the lesson is that not all activities have equal weight. Some things feel pressing, but only a few shape the real outcome. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this example and we're going to talk about something that many of you have probably seen before. And if you have not, this is one of the most powerful tools for how you prioritize the activities in your life. So if you have seen this before, great. Hopefully I can bring you something new. If not, this is something to pay attention to. So it's called the Eisenhower Matrix, right? In 1954, Eisenhower made a speech where he said, "I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent." So that single line grew into the urgent versus important matrix. He didn't draw the 2x2 grid himself. Frankly, it was probably most popularized by Stephen Covey in 1989 in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Another book that I really recommend you read. I've read dozens and dozens of business books. In general, all of them have the same kind of message that 7 Habits read. I feel like if you read 7 Habits, you would have almost a crypt notes of all other business books that I've read. So this is the Eisenhower Matrix, right? As one of the themes in this course, most frames can be solved with a 2x2 matrix. And I think you'll even recognize this because this is very similar to what we did with the stakeholder management map, right? So it is urgent along the bottom. This is not urgent. This is urgent. And importance along the left. This is not important and this is important. So in the top right there, in the do, that's the stuff that you do. That's urgent and important. That's pretty clear, right? Next to it, on the important but not urgent, this is the decide, right? This is the planning. And I will say that most effective planners, most effective leaders want to live in this space, thinking about what's next, what's the future, not worried about what's urgent, but worried about what's important and not urgent, okay? Which is slightly different from project management. We'll get that to a second. And down here, you've got on your urgent but not important stuff, delegate that. Give that to somebody else. Who can do that that's not you, right? Because if it's not important to you, it may be important to someone else that you can delegate it to, right? And then finally, what's not important and not urgent, just delete it from your life, okay? That is step one of the frame we're going to talk about tonight. But step two, because tonight is about scheduling, I'm going to talk about the single most important concept in project management, especially scheduling, and that is critical path. Critical path is just as it says, critical path. This is very, very, very important to project management. So it was developed in the 1950s by a couple guys from Remington, Rand, and DuPont, and it's how they manage complex projects. Once again, that term complex comes back up. So schedule is so important, right? If I really were to stick to the Kneffen framework, I would say most projects, when you're scheduling them, are more complicated than complex. Complex really comes when you're talking about risks and when you're talking about near critical path items or when you're talking about people and systems and stakeholders. Nonetheless, their intent was to manage complex projects. The definition, this is important, it's the longest sequence of dependent activities in a project schedule that determines the shortest possible project duration, okay? It is, as it says, the critical path to finishing the project. Remember, a project has a clear beginning and a clear end, and you can trace through that every activity that is absolutely critical. There are activities that are not critical, but there are a bunch of activities that are critical. Any delay in a critical path activity delays the total project, okay? Any critical path activity, if you delay a week, that means the end of the project delays a week. That's it. That is the definition. The opposite is non-critical activities have what's known as float, or sometimes slack. Float is the correct term. They can slip without moving the project's end date, right? So here's a real simple example. House building, commonly used in projects. Critical path is pour the foundation, frame the house, install the roof, electrical plumbing, inspections, move in. Very clear. And the end is at move in. If you delay any of these, it delays all of them like a train and it stops it, right? Non-critical tasks. Landscaping, you can do whatever, right? Painting, interior trim, same thing. All of these things can move without affecting critical path, right? But as we like to do, let's give a more specific example, maybe a little bit more relatable example, and let's talk about a road trip, right? So a road trip, in this case, I'm just going to put the charter out there for our road trip. We're going to travel from Houston to New York City safely and on schedule. It's a drive of about 1,600 miles with planned overnight stops. The family and luggage will all be transported together. We're going to arrive on June 7th, 2026. Our key deliverables: vehicle prepared and fueled, route and hotel bookings confirmed, snacks, entertainment, and luggage packed, safe arrival in New York City. My constraints are departure time fixed, limited driver hours per day, budget for fuel, hotels, and meals. My risks: traffic and weather, vehicle issues, family delays. And success: arrival in New York City by plan date, family intact, and not mutinying en route. So let's put these in terms of the Eisenhower Matrix. We'll start with the easy one, this do. This is the critical path. It starts with fuel and load the car before departure, passengers ready and in the car on time, Houston to Memphis, Memphis to DC, DC to New York, arrive by New York City on time. That is the clear critical path. If any of these get delayed, it delays the whole thing. What about our float activities? So this is in scope, but it's not activities that we have to do on critical path. Pack snacks and cooler. We can do that whenever we want, right? Doesn't matter. Download playlists and audiobooks. Once again, I can do that while I'm sitting at work the day before. Clean car before trip. I want a clean car when I drive, so it's in scope, but it doesn't necessarily have to go in for the trip. Now, I did just tell you that fueling the car is critical path, but it may not be. Right? It may be something we could do before, the night before, something like that, but loading the car will be critical path. What about some of those urgent and not important? The project term for this would be out of scope. Anything that is not important is what we call out of scope. So the delegate stuff, my kids can pack their own entertainment. That's not in my scope. I'm not doing it. When we stop at the gas station, if the kids want more snacks, they can run inside, they can get some cash, they can run inside themselves. Running back into the house for a last minute book I probably won't read. I could delegate that if I want to, but it's not something that should affect critical path. And then if my Bluetooth's not working, if I just sit in the driveway playing with it for 20 minutes, all of a sudden I've started affecting critical path for something that's out of scope. And then finally, delete. Here are the things that are not important, not urgent. On a project, we would call these waste. So out of scope and waste. Things like organizing glove compartment before leaving. What does that have to do with going to New York? Absolutely nothing. Spending an hour choosing which board games to bring just in case you're going to play board games. Out of scope. Bucky's Instagram photo sessions while the family waits, right? Out of scope. Rearranging snacks in the cooler for symmetry. Out of scope. Total waste. Debating which playlist order looks best while the car sits idle, waiting to go. Out of scope. Right? So in summary, Eisenhower Matrix, a very powerful tool. Up here, we say in scope. Here's critical path. This is out of scope. Sometimes this stuff, this urgent stuff, not important stuff will come up, and you're going to have to take a look at it, but delegate it. It's not part of the project. It's out of scope. See if someone else in the company can do that. On a road trip, we can stop for snacks, fight over music, even argue at Bucky's, but only one path that actually gets us to New York. Our lives and leadership are the same. Endless side trips are available, but only one road leads to the finish line. Same with projects.